Alrighty, so this video covers lines in point slope form on page 26 in our notebook. So there's three formulas that we're going to learn about in order to graph lines. All right, the first one that we cover is this point slope formula. You guys know slope-intercept form from middle school, but that'll be our second form, and then standard form will be our third form. So the point slope formula has the most creative name ever because it uses a point and it uses a slope, and those appear in the line. So if you look at the formula and you look at what it gives you, well, that's the name of it right away. It's kind of neat. All right, so I'm going to go through this single pepper problem set here. So it says identify the point and the slope. So we're given the equation of two lines. Okay, now my color coding here is very intentional. See, my point is this x1 and the y1 that are both here. And then my slope is this one in this kind of dingy blue. I don't know why it's so dingy. There we go. And the slope is this number in the dingy blue that's like here in front of the parentheses. So this stuff that's written in black is pretty much the same every single time. So that's the template that I write out. And then I tend to fill in those numbers. Now here, I can go the other way, right? So I can highlight those numbers. Ooh, that's a very big highlighter, Miss Caswell. So I can highlight those numbers in my appropriate colors, and I can identify the point and slope from it. So the point on this is the part that's tricky for kids. Like the slope is pretty straightforward. It's just the number in front of the parentheses. In this case, it's a 2. But the point messes up kids because this formula has a negative here, which makes it look like these change signs. So see how x1 is subtracted here, but it's positive here? Same thing with y1. In the formula, y1 is subtracted, but in the ordered pair, y1 is positive. So when I go to write these into my ordered pair, I need to make sure to change whatever sign they have. Okay, so here, x minus 6, the thing being subtracted from x is 6. Now, sometimes what I'll do is when there's addition, I'll actually split it up, right? Addition, you can break it into subtracting a negative. And I feel like that makes it more obvious why the y value here is -4. So here it was positive, in my point it's negative, and vice versa. All right, so I'm going to try that again. So my point is made up of the numbers after x and y. My slope is the number before x and y, or before the parentheses. So if I go to write the point out, okay, this x has an x plus, but the formula has a minus. So I'm converting that to subtracting a -9. So when I go to write the ordered pair, there's a -9 in the x position. Now the y is already having something subtracted. So in this case, it's just a 5 here because the thing being subtracted from y is just 5. And then our slope is just the thing in front of the parentheses. So here it's 1/3. All right, so now we're going to take it up another notch on our pepper problems. All right, so this one says to draw the graph of the lines below. Remember, you must label 2 points. So because we're writing this in our notebooks, and I know we'll have kind of a squished space in our notebook, I'm going to graph these on the same kind of piece of graph paper I have here. Okay, so starting with the red one. The point for the red one would be at -2, 3, because there's a 2 with the x that has to flip signs, and a 3 with the y. Again, you're changing your signs. And then the slope, which I usually write as m, is 1/2. So I'm going to go to -2, 3, and I'm going to plot that point. And I'm going to label that point And then I have a slope of 1/2. So from that point, I put my pencil on that point, I go up 1 and over 2. That puts me at the 0.04. Now you can, like, I find it's easiest to continue that pattern just up and down my graph. That makes it easier for me to draw a line. But you only have to label 2 of them. Okay, let's try it again with the blue. So in the blue here, my point, I have a -1 after the x, so it'll be a +1 in the point. And I have a +4 after the y, so I'm going to have a -4 for my y value. And my slope this time is -3. Okay, so first I'm going to graph 1, -4, which is right there. Ooh, now this is kind of tricky because if I go to graph -3 as my slope, remember to write it as a fraction, that would put it over 1. So I would need to fall 3 and run 1, and see how I'm falling off my graph paper? So because this is a negative slope, I know it's going to look something like this. It's going to have to go downhill. So instead of falling, I'm going to rise this time, but I'm going to run left. Normally we run right, but this time I'll run left. And that'll get me what I need in terms of my spare points. I'm just following that pattern up the graph. Notice I labeled my second point. And I know you guys don't have a straight line tool, but just try your best. That's part of why we label some of the points, is because we assume you don't have a straight line tool. I mean, I expect it because it makes my grading easier, but always label 2 points. All right, now this one appears a 3-pepper problem. I don't think it's all that difficult. Okay, so if I'm using point slope form, I need a point and a slope. So I gave a point on here that's indicated. That's at -2, 1. So there's our point. And if I'm looking for the slope, I find a secondary anchor point, and I count. It rose by 1 and it ran by 2. So the slope is 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write out my little template. All right, the m, the slope, goes in front of the parentheses. That's pretty straightforward. So then now I'm going to go ahead and plug in the x value and the y value. So the x is here is -2. So when I put it into the equation, subtracting -2 is the same as adding 2. And then the y value on my point is a 1, so in the y space I put the 1. And it'll stay as a -1 because in the point it was positive, here it has to be negative. So it's pretty straightforward to write out the equation. Okay, now our last type of spicy problem, our 3-pepper problems. I left a little more space for this in my notebook. I know that on GoodNotes it tends to go wide and short. But we're going to be given 2 points, and we have to write the equation of the line and point slope form that goes through both of these points. All right, so I have at least a point, right? I can label this x1, y1, and this one x2, y2. So I know a point at least. I could pick either one, but I don't have my slope. So I'm going to start by using our slope like we were practicing with last week. So if you don't remember the slope formula, here it is. And remember, when I plug these points in here, I need to stack them on top of themselves, right? So I draw my line with my minuses. All right. The 3 goes on top of the 2. The 1 goes on top of the -4. And I put that -4 in parentheses because we can't have negatives touching. We don't touch symbol to symbol here. So I'm going to subtract across, right? So 3 minus 1 is 2. And down below, 2 minus negative 4 is 6, because when you subtract a negative, it's like adding. And this bad boy can reduce to 1/3, because 2, 6, those are both divisible by 2. Okay, so I have a point, I have a slope. I don't have space, so I'm going to scooch this up just a little bit. Okay, so when I write out my template, that slope that we just did all that work for comes right here in front. And like I said, I could pick either point. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go with this one. Just because it has opposite signs and I like showing you guys that. So the x1 is negative 4. So in the equation, subtracting a negative 4 turns into adding 4. So I change that to a plus sign. And here, the 1 is positive, so I just put the 1 in there. And so this is the answer that we're looking for. I guess I could box it. Let me do it in like green or something. All right, we're gonna try it one more time. So I'm just labeling my points to help me with my slope formula. So I'm plugging into this formula here. Okay, I make sure to draw my line with my minuses in there. The blue point I stack on top of itself. The red point I stack on top of itself. Okay, so when I go to subtract across, 3 minus negative 1 is like 3 plus 1. Down below, negative 3 minus 2. Notice that the minuses aren't touching, so I'm not adding. This is like you owe $3 and you borrow $2, so that's negative 5. Now, negative 4/5, that doesn't reduce because 4 and 5 can't be divided by the same number. So we're okay just to go straight to our point slope formula now. So there's our template. The negative 4/5 is going to come hang out in front of the parentheses. And I can pick either point. It doesn't matter. They're both accurate. I'm going with this because this one has too many 3's for me. I don't like that. So x is a positive 2. So when it's in the equation, it's going to say x minus 2. And then y is a negative 1. So when you subtract negative 1, that's like adding 1. So we're going to change that to a plus 1. And there's our equation. So please make sure, guys, you have this fully filled out in your notes, including the graphs. If you have colored pens or pencils, remember, highlighting these colors really makes it easier for you guys later on. See you guys tomorrow.